of the Subcommittee for Water Issues here in the council chambers today, Tuesday, July 7th at 9:30. Well, it's not 9:30, but we'll pretend like it is. And I would like to call roll.
Chairman Blair,
Here?
Subcommittee Member Orr,
Yes.
Subcommittee Member Sischka.
Here.
All are present.
Okay, next item on the agenda is call to the public or public comment. Are we on Zoom or anybody listening in? Do we have anybody?
We do have one public comment that we've received. However, it's not until item number 5.
Okay, so public comments are nil. Approval of the minutes, March 3rd. I suppose everybody's got their packet and have diligently read through their minutes. Do we
I
have-
move to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 5 is approval of water service agreement. Do you want to read these, Sarah? Do you want me to?
It's up to you, however you'd like to do it.
Go ahead.
You can do it like
I
we
don't-
do it in council.
You sound so much better than I do.
Water request, Water Service Agreement 20-003 for CP Technologies.
Okay, Gwen,
Good morning.
morning.
Good morning.
Gwen Rowich with the Public Works Department, and I just want to start off with Leslie Grazer's not able to be with us today, so I'll just apologize right up front for anything I can't answer. But we'll definitely follow up with anything we're not able to tell you today. This agenda item is for CP Technology. As you can see on the map here, it's located on the northeast corner of Deepwell Ranch and SR 89. It's about 3.675 acres of a 27.5 acre site. The warehouse building is proposing to use approximately 4.1 acre feet of water per year. Therefore, it has to come to the Subcommittee for Water Issues and then subsequently to Council. They have provided a demand analysis that shows about 1,000 gallons per acre per day, which is based on a larger site. Lion Engineering provided water demand analysis for this entire area, including this 25 or 27.5 acre site. I believe that the applicant has met all the requirements. He attended PAC in March, submitted his application for water service agreement, and there is no plating process. This will be simply a building permitting process for this particular project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.
What do they do?
They manufacture parts.
Okay.
That's all I know. They manufacture.
Mr. Chairman, I went to the groundbreaking. It's an amazing company coming in from San Diego.
Okay.
And they're bringing their operations to Prescott.
Wonderful.
With lots of employees and families, and they manufacture hardware, a lot of defense drones, computer hardware types of things that it's going to be a beautiful building, and they may even expand down the road with a second building. So
Wonderful.
it's wonderful for us.
Steve? Any comments, Steve?
No comments.
Okay, so do we need a motion on this, Gwen?
We do have a public comment first.
Okay.
This was received from Leslie Hoy. Question for agenda item 5. The water demand analysis states that average usage for the project is 1,000 gallons per acre per day. I can't find anything to substantiate this average daily usage. Does it include 1, average water usage per day for all manufacturing processes, 2, water usage per day for 50 employees using the restrooms, washing their hands multiple times per day, water usage in the kitchen or employee lounge, etc., or 3, water usage for any landscaping?
So the answer to that is simple. It includes all of those things. Okay. And as I mentioned, the water demand analysis was for this entire region, including this 27.5 acre site. So as they progress through construction and actual development of the property, we'll be watching their water usage through the water model to see what their actual usage is. So at this time, that's an estimate of what their demand would be based on the fact that they're a warehouse and manufacturing facility.
Is that a normal process to look at the overall commercial area that's even not being developed and putting a number on the water prior to there being anything on that property?
It is normal to provide an estimate
Okay.
of potential water uses so that we can do long-range planning for the area. So
Okay.
it is normal to do that. Obviously, there are a lot of assumptions that can move. You know, those assumptions can change as actual developments come forward, but we have to make some assumptions about what kind of water use and what types of land uses would be there.
Very much similar to total build-out and how much water, for water catchment, upsizing of pipes that they need to have for the whole property.
And that's part of the demand analysis that they do is the backbone infrastructure, if you will, of the pipe sizing and things like that in order to provide fire flows. It's a little bit simpler to provide estimates for residential uses than it is for commercial and industrial uses, but we do our best to anticipate the types of uses that
Yeah,
might
Gwen,
be
if
there.
this is for the entire 27 acres, it works out to be about 0.15 acre foot per acre. So that's totally reasonable. It's like a residential situation.
It's very low demand
Yeah.
for this particular type of use, yeah.
Well, how often do you look at that through the modeling? Do you look at it like once a year to make sure those water demands are within line?
We update the model annually,
Okay,
yes.
that's fair enough.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion and make a statement before I do. Is that CP Technologies looked all over the Southwest. They chose Prescott, Arizona. So it's a great, and they wanted a high visibility area, so they're going to be right there by the entrance to the airport. So congratulations to Prescott. And I'd like to make a motion to approve water service agreement application number WSA 20-003.
Hold on a second, Billy. Our motion would be to pass it on to council, right?
That is correct.
So it is to recommended motion to approve. So by approving it, we're approving to send it to council.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we unanimously would like to see it on the council's agenda.
Congratulations, CP Technologies.
Yes, and congratulations, Prescott, right?
Okay, number 6 is infrastructure topic, which I asked when to put this on. We meet, which I'm glad we do, as a chairman to talk about different things that are of interest, probably to me more so than a lot of people, but also of interest, I would hope, to the community. So this infrastructure topic is about pumping versus recharge and an update of where we're at today. And I think those are sometimes things that council doesn't see as a whole. And I've asked them to bring this forward so that we better understand it as a subcommittee and that we can move this on to council as just as an informational piece. Thank you, Gwen.
Okay, so the chart that you see on the screen in front of you is an overview of the last 5 years of the city's pumping and recharge activities. So recharge includes both effluent from the wastewater treatment facility as well as surface waters that we recharge into the ground after we have monsoon and precipitation. So obviously the surface water piece varies greatly from year to year depending on weather conditions. And that's reflected here in the chart. As you can see in 2014, 15, and 16, we didn't quite recharge as much as we pumped from the ground. In 2017, we had a pretty good year, and we did recharge more water than we actually pumped into the ground. We'll put each year, at the end of the year, we'll add another year to this and bring it back to the committee. One of the things that Councilman Blair asked is if we could also provide a monthly and then a year to date. I didn't have that ready for the packet, but I was able to pull it together before the meeting today, so I'll put it up on the overhead here so you can see it. This right here is the year to date, and one of the things that you're obviously seeing is that in January and February, the recharge was significantly lower than you're seeing in March, April, and May, and that's because we recharge from Willow and Watson Lakes beginning April 1st through October 1st of each year. This year, the Verde chain was full a little bit early, so we were able to start pumping 10 days earlier in March, and that's why you see the recharge a little bit higher here in March for this year. So on average, we're doing quite well this year. Total pumped at 2,492 acre feet and total recharged year to date at 3,439 acre feet. Here at the bottom is a chart just for the month of May. So you can see here in the month of May, We pumped 769 acre feet, and we recharged 955 acre feet. And we'll bring this to you each month. We're about a month or so behind because it's almost impossible to bring you June numbers in the first week of July, so we'll be about a month behind, but we'll bring this to you every month.
So Gwen, can you email this to us? This chart that we
Absolutely.
wasn't in the packet.
Be happy to do
And,
that.
and what was that number that you just said? 3,000
It's
something?
at the top here, so the total recharged January to May
Oh, I see
of
it.
this year is 3,439.56 acre feet.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I asked this to come forward because oftentimes, as a council, we sit there and we know we're recharging water, but what does that really mean for our aquifer and for us using water on a daily basis, a monthly basis, and even a yearly basis? And this is to show the public a couple of things. Number one, that we were probably pretty fortunate to get Watson and Willow Lake as our water portfolio to help drive these numbers to set a balance in what we can do in our aquifer as far as safe yield. So these numbers here mean a lot to me.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we ask John Heine, city manager, to put a press release out on this. I think this is really good news.
I think the more that we can share positive, I mean,
right.
we hear negatives all the time, but
Yeah.
to me, this is certainly a positive.
Yep.
So what do you think, Mr. Shiska?
I'd say we're heading in the right direction,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's ask Mr. Heine if we can. How would you want us to proceed as a subcommittee getting this information to council? Do you think we just provide it to them on an email, or do you want to bring it up publicly in a public meeting?
No, I think that it ought to be public.
Yeah.
I think
I
that
think it
we
should be a
ought to have a
presentation, right?
presentation made like
Yeah.
you've made to the Water Issues Committee.
Absolutely, we can do that in work study if you'd like.
Well, I have a suggestion. Don't we have the annual update after the annual report coming up?
We normally do you're talking about the annual report to ADWR. We normally do that in March because we weren't having public meetings in March. We didn't do it. We can still bring it back to council if you'd like, and we can provide this information at this
Oh, I think we should.
Probably a good idea.
The information here in the 5-year plan is based on the information we submit to ADWR as part of our annual report. These numbers you're seeing right here, these are based from our operations group on a month-to-month basis. We haven't reported them yet.
So we can request, Mr. Chairman, we can request a presentation to go onto the agenda. There are 3 of us.
I think, sometime in August, or so Sarah can certainly find out when we can have a half-hour presentation. I
Should
think
be
is a
able to
great
do
thing.
that at the first August
in
meeting.
a
That'd be
study
great.
session. And I guess a question to Clyde would be, knowing that these numbers here are different, because I'm not sure I totally understand storage and supply based upon our water portfolio, maybe Gwen can answer it. Do these go into credits, or do they just go towards safe yield? How does that function?
I'll let Clyde answer that.
So, if you look at January and February, the orange there is primarily effluent recharged. So that's effluent we return from the system because we can't capture surface water and recharge it in those months. So you'll see we're doing pretty well on our effluent return. Those effluent credits go to our long-term storage account, which we can use again at some point in the future. For March, April, and May, you can estimate where the effluent is just slightly below the water used, the same as it is in the other months. And then any recharged water above that has to be used annually. So that's used to offset our pumping on an annual basis. Does that answer the question?
Used in what degree? So like we just approved a commercial piece of property with water. Is that water that we can use out of this pool?
Well, that's a bigger question. The surface water directly offsets the pumped water
Right.
on an annual basis. So if you think about that extra orange part that's surface water as opposed to effluent, that directly offsets the blue. The effluent part goes to our long-term storage account, which we don't use currently. We can use it at some point in the future.
Right.
When you talk about actually approving projects, that is it's sort of a separate accounting. So this is actual use.
Okay.
And then when you approve things, that's sort of a planning use. After we have 5 years of data, then we know what their actual use is and we can plan for that. But right now, this is just what we're using. It's not really what we're approving for people in the future. So the recharge numbers, the effluent, we could use at some point in the future, but we're not now. The surface water we are using right now just to offset pumping. It's not something that we give to people.
Okay.
That's not clear in my head after saying that, but
No, I understand. I like the numbers going the way they're going, and I think one other thing I'd like to see, and I don't know that we have the capability to do that yet, is the fact like at the Dells where we have a master meter in and a master meter out. I'd like to, at some point in time to see X amount of water has gone into that development and X amount of water has come back out. What is that percentage? Is it 92? I mean, we talk about percentages of numbers all the time, but we should be able to have a realistic number that we can see on a map like this that says, based upon new development, here's what's going in and here's what's coming out. Can we get that?
I imagine we can. I know we have those meters at the Dells, but it depends on how long they've been in. Once the landscape is established, all of those kinds of things.
I know
sort of offset the
I know the
numbers.
first phase is built out. So the question becomes is at what point in time can we actually see the reasons we did what we did out there with a master meter in and a master meter out, and also our new plant palette and our new, with new houses, all our new appliances and low flows and stuff like that. I think it would be a very interesting number for people to see what we're doing here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I did a little calculating here, and in January, we pumped 423 basic acre feet and recharged 357. That's an 84% return. And that's citywide.
And my mission as being the chairman of the unsewered water areas, if we can get these unsewered areas on sewer, those numbers would be perfect if we could offset what we're taking out based upon what we're putting back.
Right.
So that would be the whole mission of, and to have these numbers and be able to see when we finally look at some of these areas we put on sewer, to see what those numbers, how they've grown or if they grow.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on this matter?
It's very good information.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Sarah. I forgot what number we're on.
Item 7, conservation and education discussion, fiscal year 2020 rebate summary, and fiscal year 2021 goals.
All right, so the city's had a conservation program for a number of years now. We had a fantastic year in the conservation. This year, we had a total of 132 rebates. You can see kind of how the breakdown is. Washing machines were very popular. That was something new that we added this year, and they were very popular. Toilets come in a close second. Rainwater harvesting is still very popular. I can tell you that at least half of the rainwater harvesting rebates hit the maximum. They actually were larger than the maximum rebate we provide, so that's very good news. Turf removal and, of course, irrigation timers. So we estimate an annual water savings of about 2.2 million gallons per year based on this year's rebate amounts. So that's a pretty impressive number when you think about it. We do promote conservation in a number of ways here. Obviously, this year with COVID, we weren't able to attend a lot of public events where we talk about this and hand out information. But the Highland Center for Natural History had their spring plant sale, and we were able to provide 150 informational packets to go out with their plants. It was so successful, they emailed us this week and said, hey, we're going to have a fall plant sale, and we'd like you to participate with us again. So wherever we can do education outreach, we're still doing it. We post on Facebook and any other ways that we can to get the message out to folks that we have rebates, and water conservation is key here in the city of Prescott.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
what Gwen's figure said was that we saved 6.75 acre feet by doing this
And
year.
I think this should be part of our
I
presentation.
agree.
I think all these positive things need to say, look what we're doing for the environment and trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
So if you would make this part of that presentation as well.
Absolutely. And we had budgeted $40,000 for the rebate program this year, and we came in just under the wire at $39,173.50. So, you know, we're not going to turn anyone away. If the rebates need to go beyond that, we'll find a way to make that happen, because this is an extremely positive influence on the water system here in Prescott.
It's wonderful.
Any questions?
Just one. Knowing that those project types, are those mostly existing homes and not new homes?
I'd
would-
have
they
to
would
dig
have to
in.
be, wouldn't they?
I'd have to dig in. We use a program called Waterways for people to apply, so I'd have to go in and look at the addresses to tell you if they're in newer or older.
I would assume
It is-
that the new homes already have those things in place.
They have most of those things except maybe the washers. The toilets for sure are replacement. Rainwater harvesting can happen anywhere. Turf removal obviously is going to be in older neighborhoods. That's not going to be in new neighborhoods, but it's possible the washing machines may be in newer neighborhoods. It's really hard to know without looking at the addresses. But we could do that and bring that back to you at next month's meeting, just sort of an update to where these are, most being
I
utilized.
guess the reason why I'm asking the question is knowing that this is such a positive thing, that whether the city needs to be more proactive of aggressively going out to the older neighborhoods with this program, whether it be, let's just use a homeowners association like Hidden Valley Ranch to put pamphlets in their neighborhood yearly meetings to let them know that this is available. Maybe work a little bit harder
That's a great idea.
in the older neighborhoods to let them know that this money is available. If you're going to change your toilets, it's a good time to do it. And I think the more we do that kind of stuff, the better served we are.
I agree.
Absolutely. And we, just as a little bit of an aside, we hired a second water resource project manager. Her name is Kay Sido. She's coming to us from Florida, and she'll be starting on July 20th. So we'll have a little more resources in the office
Nice.
to do these sorts of things. It's a little bit time intensive, but it's so well worth it.
Nice. What's her name again?
Kay Sido. She comes from Florida.
Okay.
And just as an update, Leslie, how's she doing?
I believe she's doing as well as she can.
Yeah, really. Her husband
so-
passed away. So, yes. Anyhow, so she's been off, and it's kind of a shock and something that only time will heal, but best of thoughts for her.
Oh, I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Thank
I'm
you.
so sorry.
Okay, that item, is that all we have on that item, Gwen?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah.
Item 8, focus discussion regarding Governor's Water Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council Annual Report.
Before you go there, I want to ask the committee something. I think it's important. The information sometimes that we derive from all the things that we do, I also sometimes think it's important to send a packet or send something directly to the governor's office about here's what Prescott, Arizona, and Yavapai County are doing for water. The guy sits there on his pedestal, and not be negative about it, but that's where he is. And sometimes, you're only as good as the information you receive. So I think we really do need to make that stuff available, and whether they choose to read it or not, if we could just send it down to the legislatures, to the head of the Senate and the head of the House, and to the governor's office, just as an annual report, so they can see what we're doing, I think is a good thing.
Mr. Chairman, I think Governor Ducey would welcome this kind of
I think so.
information. I know Lauren, his policy person, would want to know.
Yeah.
And to support local control.
Yeah.
I think the more that we can say, look at the job we're doing locally, so that when they try to take some of this away from us, that we can say, this is why.
I think the more we let it be known, the better off we are.
Absolutely. And I think, I know the governor would welcome it. And
Well, Prescott's on the leading edge of PSPRS. We may
Yeah.
as well be on the leading edge for the state with water.
yeah,
I think if
We
you
are.
have bragging rights,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
might as well use them.
yeah.
So
It's a great
and
idea.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Clyde. Everybody that's put this together collectively, and thank you, the city of Prescott and its residents, because we couldn't do it without them as well, and Mother Nature, of course. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. Number 8.
No worries. Did you read the item already, Sarah? Okay, I just couldn't remember where we were at. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I can because it's a lot of information and
Yeah.
yeah, but the actual governor's, so the Governor's Water Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council was formed in January, and that's a typo, of January of 2019, so I'll apologize for that right up front. It was established by an executive order of the governor, and it happened at the same time that they adopted or ratified the drought contingency plan for the state of Arizona. And the mission of, we call them GWAC because I hate saying Governor's Augmentation Innovation over and over and over. Their mission is to identify opportunities for water augmentation and conservation, assess the impact that conservation is having throughout the state, form a communication plan that conveys the status of water throughout the state and promotes conservation activities, and to prepare an annual report once a year, and finally to provide guidance to ADWR. So what you're seeing here in front of you today is a very high-level summary of the first annual report and what the council was able to achieve in 2019. The things that this council particularly address are the increasing pressures on groundwater supplies in areas that are not regulated, completion of the 4th management plans. By the way, Prescott is working on its 5th management plan. General stream adjudication and water supply physical availability in Pinal County. There's a complete list of committee members. There are 43 committee members, by the way, and the ADWR director serves as the chairman on this particular committee.
Gwen, can I stop there, Mr. Chairman? So I recognize, of course, Speaker Bowers and President Fan. Who else is in our area that's on this list? I mean, I know Rusty Bowers isn't, but when I look at that list, is there someone that's in Yavapai County that's on that list?
No,
I didn't see anybody either. Okay, I just wondered.
this is different.
Ron Doba represents
That's
the
right, Ron
city.
is. Ron Doba is the NAMWA,
Oh, that's, okay, good.
our chairperson, and he's very involved in that. But as far as a governmental official, like a city council person, there is not one.
So I saw Warren Tinney. Is he from our area? Okay, I didn't know him, so, all right.
Brady Gamage and all these guys, and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Clyde, these are all people that have been involved in water for a long,
I'm
long
sure.
time for the most part.
Okay.
All right, so the main drive of this committee is that there are 4 subcommittees. The first one is the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee, which their main mission is to identify and explore ways to augment water supplies in Arizona. So they're looking at things like brackish water, desalination, and best management practices that are used throughout the state in order to extend the use of groundwater, throughout the state. And a lot of those best management practices we use here. That's our rebate program, our conservation incentives, things like that. This particular committee was very active in 2019. They created a document. They actually hired, let's see if I can get it in there. They hired Carollo Engineers, which we have a long-standing relationship with as well, to develop a long-term water augmentation options for the state of Arizona. Now, this report was put out in late 2019. Nothing in here is mandated by the state. All of the recommendations in this document are just that, recommendations and things for people to explore further in order to augment water options throughout the state of Arizona. There's a link to this document in the packet where if you have the desire to read the entire thing, you are welcome to do so. Sorry, I got to make it bigger. My eyes can't read it. There we go. So as I mentioned, the augmentation options are suggestions, not requirements. They did form another subcommittee from within this committee to establish site selection criteria to identify the 6 most potentially acceptable water storage sites on state trust land, and that information is due back to the state by December of 2020. The second committee is the Desalination Committee, which was established to evaluate the feasibility of developing desalination projects. This is primarily focused in the Yuma area, near the Yuma desalting plant and the benefits to the Colorado River supply. They're also exploring collaborative opportunities for ocean desalination projects to increase delivery and exchange of the Colorado River through the Binational Desalination Work Group. The Post-2020 Active Management Areas Committee, this committee is very active as well, particularly for us here in Prescott. They were established to reduce reliance on groundwater over the 5 management periods that started in 1980, which run through 2025. So in 1980 through 2025, the requirements for conservation progressively became more restrictive through the state. The group itself has identified challenges within the AMAs. Each AMA has challenges that may not be unique to the entire state. And so that's kind of the focus of this particular group. And the way they're addressing that is through what they're calling issue briefs. And I do have a couple of those here I can kind of throw up on the screen. To date, they've established 3 issue briefs. Those are also available through a link through the packet on ADWR's website. There's the unreplenished groundwater withdrawals issue paper, which talks about groundwater that's legally withdrawn with no requirement or obligation to artificially replenish it. And there are a number of unreplenished groundwater withdrawals that take place throughout the state. Those include things like pre-1995 subdivisions, groundwater allowances that were designated as part of the formation of the AMA, irrigation grandfathered extinguishment credits. Those are not replenished. Exempt wells and remediated groundwater. So there's a number of things going on in this particular subcommittee where they're talking about unreplenished groundwater withdrawals. There's also another issue paper, and this one is of particular interest in Prescott because it's about exempt wells. And we have a high proliferation of exempt wells in the Prescott AMA. Let me see here if I can point to it. Oh, I did sort of highlight it there for you. So they actually talk about exempt wells in the Prescott AMA in this particular issue paper, because approximately 12% of the state's exempt wells are located in a basin that is comprised of less than half of 1% of the state's entire area. Even further, the Prescott AMA contains 30% of all exempt wells in all 5 AMAs, but represents only 3% of the AMA land area. That's a significant statement right there. And so exempt wells in Prescott AMA are being talked about in this particular issue paper and how that might be addressed going forward. The last issue paper that's in draft at this time is something called the hydrologic disconnect. And I'll admit I had to look this one up because I have no idea what a hydrologic disconnect is. But essentially it is, here we go, I've highlighted it. The ability to legally recover or replenish water that was stored or pumped in a different location, right? So
say that again.
So you pump water from one location and recharge it into a different location, or essentially a different basin. And so the hydrologic disconnect is an issue. They talk about it in here down around the Phoenix area. I don't know if it's something in the Prescott area, but they're talking about the hydrologic disconnect because legally on paper, they're not required under the 1980 Groundwater Management Act to recharge into the same basin from which they pump.
Would that be like the Big Chino water ranch pumping into the AMA?
No, it's AMA specific. It has to do with you replacing the water that you took out. So this is primarily an issue for the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. If you recall, there were a series of articles in the paper over the last 8 months or so about how they're increasing their pumping very heavily in one spot and then actually recharging the water 100, 200 miles away. So it's not like they're replenishing the basin that they're actually drawing from within the same AMA.
It would be like us pumping out of Big Chino and putting it into the Agua Fria.
Yes, in the way it works.
still
Legally,
in
it's
the same
outside of the AMA, so it's a different issue. It would be as though we were pumping from Prescott Valley's wells and recharging into our recharge field, different places.
interesting.
I have a question early on. I don't mean to take you backwards, but it kind of boggles my mind that when they're looking at state land as a group for storage, are we talking about above ground storage or are we talking about below ground storage?
The majority of it will be below ground storage because you don't have the same evaporation issues.
So they're determining the soil types and where best to do that?
Right. The best places to site it.
Okay.
And it's another thing that deals with the hydrologic disconnect because they want to have that in the areas that the pumping's actually happening from too. So they're looking at state lands close to the pumping so that they can recharge where they need to.
Okay. That's an interesting mind thought.
Mr. Chairman, it might be interesting in that presentation that we're going to have to council to bring forth the information about the exempt. Since we're standing out in that area is all I'm saying. Not that we have much control over it, but it's information.
Yeah, I think all this stuff is it's good food for thought for the council for a study session on all of it. Because like I said, you're only as good as the information you receive.
You know, Gwen, my question is, what is the end game in all of these position papers and everything like that? It's great to say this is the way things are, and then it's another thing to work toward doing something about it. So what's your feeling about that?
So I don't believe you can work toward a solution until everyone agrees on what the issue is. So here in 2020, the subcommittees of the council are identifying the issues. And if they get that far, they're also making recommendations like the Water Augmentation Committee did on ways that you could augment more water. But these issue papers haven't got that far yet. They're still very much in discussion. In fact, the issue papers that are online are still in draft form. They're still subject to change somewhat or be added to. In 2021, it's the focus of the council that the committee begin working on long-term solutions for the issues that have been identified. So that's where we're headed in 2021. ADWR will continue to lead the discussions, and City of Prescott will obviously be participating in those discussions. In fact, that's one of the things that Leslie's doing today is she's participating in some of these subcommittee meetings because it's really important that we are there so that we can hear the things that the state is talking about and how they might impact us and either dispute or provide additional information to help redirect conversations.
I often thought that this is, I guess, something that's always been on my mind. Clyde and I don't even know how to get there, but some of these committee meetings, like on these exempt wells that we're seeing so many of, at what point in time I always thought that if you're allowed to drill a well, that you should be required to drill a dry well as well and capture the water off your house that would go into a dry well or a cistern system for watering your outside vegetation. And anything that's left over goes back in to the ground system. At what point in time does somebody look at that and say that's a valuable thing to do? Now the individual well owners are giving back to their own properties by taking the water off their homes and putting it into a dry well that will offset the amount of water they're pumping. At what point in time does somebody bring that forward to make any sense out of that? I mean, I know that it's a private property right, but at what point in time can there ever be a law that says you need to do the right thing for water?
Well, as you know, you're part of the Upper Verde Watershed Protection Coalition. They've had some exploratory or test plots with a scheme just like that.
Right.
Part of the Governor's Waters Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council is to look at those sorts of ideas. Those kind of, how can we offset pumping? How can we offset water usage, particularly for exempt wells? The problem is that their focus is generally on the larger users, Phoenix, Tucson, big water issues, not as much on individual homes. So while individual exempt wells is an issue in one of these topic papers, they haven't started to come up with sort of solutions for it or creative outcomes for it. And that's where us having someone at those meetings participating actively is an important thing because we can talk about what's going on
And
locally.
when you talk about the number of wells that we have in our own AMA, and if you could put recovery wells or dry wells in there and recoup maybe half of everything that they pump, well, that'd be a positive. And I don't know why we're not, moving forward with that, but I would like someday somebody to do that. But anyhow, I think all this information is great to have for council. You know, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So the last committee that we'll talk about is the Non-Active Management Area Groundwater Committee. So this committee lags behind some of the others a little bit in terms of that they haven't actually produced any documents or statements of direction for the non-active management areas. They're still discussing topics and issues and trying to get their arms around that, primarily groundwater management strategies. They're specifically talking about well spacing, well impacts, well monitoring or possible measuring and reporting. And remember, it's not just exempt wells. There are a lot of wells throughout the state. There are agricultural wells, industrial wells. So it's not just exempt wells for single families, but they are still gathering data, and so they haven't produced any documents or anything for us to review yet. But those are the topics that they're discussing, is how we can manage water in non-AMA areas throughout the state. And last... Okay, did you hear what Clyde said? This is the committee that would deal with the Big Chino Water Ranch as well. And then of course, they also cover best management practices and education and outreach in non-active management areas. So because there's no focused education and outreach in non-AMA areas. Groundwater, there's also, this council oversees a groundwater conservation grant. So there's $2 million a year that's appropriated from the state general fund for the augmentation and conservation activities that go on throughout the state. They're used to support conservation programs. The Prescott AMA is awarded $150,000 a year for that. And we use those monies for education outreach and to do projects if we can find projects. This grant money is in addition to the grant money that we receive for our groundwater withdrawal fees that we pay annually. We also receive grant monies from those contributions that we make each year. So it's a lot of information to throw at you all at one time. There are links on here to the documents that I spoke of, the issue papers, the augmentation report that Carollo put out, and of course staff is here to answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, Billy, go ahead.
Yes, Gwen, do you think you could get me or us, if we actually a hard copy of that long-term water augmentation report?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'd like that. Thank you.
I would as well. And I think as long as we're talking about putting a study session together, I know that we've been working on the Big Chino Ranch and our well pumping, and Leslie's not here, and we have a new person coming on. But I'd like to hear an update on the Big Chino Water Ranch and the evaluation of what the city of Prescott and SRP is doing when that study's supposed to be over, you know, because we've been working on it. Is there any new information that can be shared?
We can give you an update on comprehensive agreement number 1.
Perfect.
Absolutely, at the next meeting.
When was 2022 supposed to be the beginning of the end, so to speak, for the Big Chino Water Ranch study?
The study's supposed to be completed this fall.
Okay.
So this fall.
Okay.
That completes our 5-year deal, right?
Yes.
That's why it's exciting to see something going on.
Yeah,
We'll bring you an update next month.
great.
All right. That's all I have on that topic. Councilman Blair, you did ask for a bulleted document overview of the GWAC, which I do have for you, if any of you would like that for your use
Yes.
outside of this meeting. Okay.
I appreciate that. Any other questions? I think we're down to number 9, which is adjournment. Anybody else have anything? Maybe I'll ask the question, we're going to have a water meeting again next month. Is there anything that either member would like to see?
So that meeting will be after our study session? Yes.
We meet the first Tuesday
It'll
in
be
August.
before because you meet the first Tuesday and
Okay.
the study session meeting won't be until the second Tuesday.
Well, I think that's good because there might be something, other ideas we have to
Okay.
bring to the study session.
So basically, we'll just, instead of bogging them down, knowing you have a new employee coming on in Leslie's situation, we won't overburden you with too
Thank
much
you.
research. So if we can fine tune our process of putting together that study session for council and those different bullet points we asked for, and the Big Chino Ranch and the GUAC, the governor's augmentation report and those things. There's probably, that I could count, about 5 different items that we just covered that we can bullet point and do a study session on.
Okay.
Anything else?
There's someone in the audience I don't know, and I just wondered if we could introduce her. I'm sorry. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's not on the agenda. That's what he tell.
Oh, okay.
That's what attorneys do. They just always like to, side skirt the issue by saying it's not on the agenda. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right. We're adjourned.
Great. Good job.
Thank you, Gwen.